Hello, hello. Welcome. Long time no see, or nice to meet ya. It's been a while. I've only done one video so far this year because life has definitely been out to kick my ass. So apologies for that. I do have other videos planned, but for now, you're just going to have to settle for another one of my boring tutorials. So I introduced to you my latest pattern, but is also an older pattern, which you may have seen back in 2022. This is the Sanctuary Tote, and this bag is about 11 inches by 4 inches by 12 inches in its finished form, and it's got a large exterior slip pocket as well as a large interior slip pocket and a hidden zipper pocket. I do recommend using cotton or canvas for this bag. I'm going to be using a cypress cotton canvas from Spoonflower. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to be using a canvas from Zorel Fabrics. I switched up my fabric at the last minute, but I still recommend doing something other than vinyl. I will be using a vinyl accent, but it's a relatively thin vinyl. Thicker vinyls will be problematic on this pattern, so I do not recommend it. But this is a pattern that I created towards the end of 2022 when I was on the K&A Fabrics strike team, and I wanted something new to showcase some of the fabric that I was striking, and this was for a character paneled bag, and I wanted to showcase the panel, and I couldn't decide any of the other patterns that I wanted to use that were already in my stash. So over a couple of days I drew and completely designed and then made up a test pattern, and then went ahead and did the strike on the second bag all within about 3 or 4 days. So it was definitely a rush job, and I had made only one other since. So I'd made a grand total of 3 of this bag. And then it just sat for over a year. And I finally decided that I needed to put it together and get it out there. So here you go. There is a 3/8 inch seam allowance throughout the entire bag. And there is a 1/8 inch baste and top stitch. There are tapered pieces on the lining, so you do not have to taper your stitching at all to prevent saggy lining. As usual, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to go through step by step as I describe everything in the instructions, and I'm going to try not to go off page so that I don't lose you. Let's begin! To start, if you've chosen to use stabilizer, go ahead and fuse the stabilizer to the bottom exterior piece as centered as possible, as well as in the center widthwise and up at the very edge of both ends of the strap anchor band. Alright, let's start with the shoulder strap and the strap anchor band. You're going to need the shoulder or crossbody strap pieces, the strap anchor piece, 2 sets of rivets, a strap slider, an end cap and screws if you've chosen to use those, as well as a pen, a ruler, double-sided tape if you want to use it, and a screwdriver to install your cap. Starting with the strap anchor band, just go ahead and draw a line down the center from one end to the other. When done, if you're using double-sided tape, go ahead and throw a piece down the middle. Peel the backing off and fold the long edges into the drawn line. And then I like to use my leather roller just to kind of press it down, get it to stay a little bit better. Set that piece aside and then do the exact same to both of the strap pieces. And I know it says so in the instructions, but I'm just going to go ahead and repeat that if you are one of the people who like to do the 4-inch wide double folded straps, go for it. This is just the way that I do it because my OCD will not allow me to do it the other way. I have to have double folds on both sides. So you do whatever you want to do. Now that both sides are done, I'm going to place a strip of double-sided tape down the center of one of the two sides. Doesn't have to be perfect. You're just going to need it to hold the two pieces together so they'll sit still while you stitch. Once you've got your pieces together, give it a once or a twice over just to make sure that it's as even as you can get it. Now it's time to top stitch. And as you can see, I've got a little channel going here with a couple of my bar magnets. I've actually got a video that I'm working on talking about how I use these. One of the ways is to do centered top stitching, decorative stitching on straps. So right now I've got the strap anchor band, and I am going to do a couple of rows of center decorative stitching. I'm not going to stitch on the outside because that's going to be done later when we attach it to the bag. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this 3/8 of an inch in from each side. And now my strap anchor band is done for now, so I'm going to go ahead and set that aside. And now I'm going to go ahead and add the centered decorative stitching on my strap as well. Now, as you can see, I've changed the arrangement a little bit, and I'm going to be using my edge foot so I can go ahead and do the top stitching on the sides. Alright, so now my strap is done being stitched. I'm just going to clean up the edges a little bit. Next, lay both ends of your strap up against a ruler, and using some kind of a marking tool where you can actually see it on your fabric, you're going to want to make marks for where your rivet holes are going to be. I like to do mine at 5/8 of an inch, 1 1/4 of an inch, 2 3/4 of an inch, and 3 3/8 inches. And then go ahead and punch your holes. And now we're just going to add some of the hardware. And it might seem a little odd, but this is just prepping the strap for the last step. So you want to make sure you know which part is going to be the top and the bottom. And you're going to want to install the slider so that it sort of faces up towards what would be the top of the strap, or the part that is most visible. And then if you're using end caps, I like to put mine on before I do my rivets, because then I don't have to bend the strap backwards to try and get it on there and give it a weird bend mark. So here's one issue that sometimes people come across, is that the end cap is a little bit too thick for, or a little too thin for the thicker materials that you're trying to jam in there. So I just grab some glass running pliers, or as some people call them, key fob pliers, and just squish the ends. And so once you get that squished, get your strap end on. And another thing that I like to do that I did not show, I sometimes will color the end of my strap if it's got a light colored backing, just in case little bits of it peek through the sides of the strap anchor, or the cap, so it's not so obvious. And I'm still having trouble with this, so I'm going to show you another way that I like to handle this. So I've got a couple of sets of reverse pliers. I've got these needle-like ones, and then these flathead ones. And I will stick it in there and just pry it open, just ever so slightly. You don't want to do it too much because it will snap. That just gives it a little extra room to slide on with no more issues. And then I just try and press it on as evenly as I can, as tightly as I can, and covering up as much of that end as I can. And then go ahead and install the screws. And then before I stop, I like to squeeze it back into place, just to give it a little bit of an extra tight grip. And then I will go ahead and install the rivets. And there we go. The strap is done for now. I know you may be tempted to add the strap end on this side. You can, if your strap end can fit through your slider with the cap on. If it won't, then it's best to leave it off. I do know that these caps will fit through this slider, but I'm just going to follow the way the instructions are written, so let's leave it off. Hello, hello. It feels like it's been forever since I originally started recording this video a couple of weeks ago, but I was sick, and I'm no longer sick, but the sickness definitely kicked my ass, and as you can hear, my voice is not completely back to normal, but I wanted to get this done for you, and at least you can understand me now. So continuing on from where I left off, couple of weeks ago for me, a couple of seconds ago for you, we are going to move on to the front exterior pocket. The pieces that you're going to need are A1, which is the main front upper piece, and A3, which is the front pocket exterior. And then you're also going to need B3, which is the front upper accent, and B4, which is the main lower accent, as well as your front pocket stabilizer, C3, which is your front pocket lining A, and C4, which is front pocket lining B. Then for the hardware, you're going to need 1/2 of a snap. I'm using the male half. And if you'd like to put on an exterior bag tag, you'll need that as well. Starting off, we're going to take the front pocket exterior and lower accent and place them together at the bottom. Then using your construction stitch length, stitch them together at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Next, you're going to want to butterfly the seams open. You can either press them or use double-sided tape. I like to use double-sided tape just because it helps hold everything in place, since it's not an area where you can use clips. I'll just pull it apart and press the seams open. I like to use my leather roller just to make sure everything sticks down and stays where it should. Alright, so I've got my thread changed over. I'm going to go ahead and top stitch on both the upper side and lower side of the seam. And I just want to point out that from time to time you might see wet streaks throughout the video. Sometimes I like to use thread lubricant. It really works well when I'm switching between fabrics, and it helps keep my needle gum free. Alright, so I've switched over to my red thread. I've also switched my foot to my top stitching foot, and I'm going to go ahead and top stitch both above and below the seam. Next, you are going to want to add the stabilizer. And we're just going to center it right in the middle of the panel. Alright, so I've got my stabilizer attached, and if you are using an exterior bag tag and want to put it on the front, now is the perfect time to do so. If you are using a decorative panel, then I recommend putting your label down on the lower accent. If you are not using a panel, then the placement up on the main part of the bag would be perfectly fine. There we go. Next, we're going to take this piece as well as piece A for the lining, and a ruler. You're also going to need a removable marking tool. And I'm going to use my Choco pen. And I'm going to draw a line 3/4 of an inch down from the top edge. Okay, I'll set those aside for a second. Now you're going to need the front upper accent piece, as well as your ruler again. And we're going to draw a line at 1/2 inch on both long edges. Don't mind me, I just goofed. 1/2 inch on both sides. I just did a 3/4 of an inch accidentally. Oops. Now you're going to need some double-sided tape and just lay it across the edge on both sides. Go ahead and remove the backing. And you're going to fold the long edges in to that drawn line, creating a 1/4 of an inch crease or lip or fold or whatever you want to call it. Then again, I'm going to add some more tape. So that it's kind of half on the folded side and half on the backing. I'm going to peel off one side first. I'm going to take the lining piece, or rather the exterior piece, and I'm going to lay this so that it rests on the edge of, or rests on the line. So just like that, it is attached. If you want, I will show you another way to put this on. It involves 2 rulers. So if you are not able to actually make the markings, or if you don't trust your markings, just put a ruler down at that 3/4 of an inch. Then lay another ruler up against it, hold that one in place and remove the first, and then you can just butt the accent piece up right against your ruler. It'll give you a nice straight edge and at the accurate marking. So now that that's on there, you can either top stitch it now, or you can wait till you have the other piece attached. I'm going to go ahead and attach the other piece first, just so I can do all of the stitching in one step. All right, go ahead and top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now, if you want, you can go ahead and clean off your marks. And then you're going to fold the 2 pieces together, lining them up at the bottom, and add some clips. Now, this part was not mentioned in the pattern, but I'm just going to show you how to do it now. One thing that was kind of common in some of the tester bags is it was kind of hard to achieve the 1 inch edge here. So what you do once you've got it folded is you want to press your edge down and then take a ruler and make sure that you've got an actual inch. Now, depending on the fabric and how well you've placed your lines, you might not have a full inch. So right now I can see I've got about a 1/16 of an inch gap where it shouldn't be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unclip my bag. I'm going to slide the lining down about a 1/16 of an inch and then add clips again. Or rather, you'd be sliding the lining up. Okay, and then I'm going to reclip the top. And I'll throw one up there just for good measure. And then I will take my ruler again, and I now have a full inch. So the lining side, as you will see, is raised up ever so slightly, but because of the fact that you don't top stitch both layers together, it won't matter. It's still gonna look good and you don't have to worry about your alignment. And I think that's one thing that people actually were kind of confused on as to why I did this panel the way that I did. It's because depending on the fabric that you use and the measurements that you go by, you could very well end up with it misaligned, and that did happen. So just to clarify, you can fix it before you actually put the whole bag together. So I'm going to go ahead now that I have that full inch, and I'm going to top stitch along the top edge. Go ahead and remove your clips. And you're going to want to find the center on the back side on the lining. And since you can't clip it, you're going to have to use a ruler, or you could fold it in half and use a removable marking tool. I'm just going to go ahead and use my ruler because it just makes it so much easier for me. And we're going to make a mark 1/2 inch down. I'm just finding my 1/2 inch spot. That's a little too far over. It's fine. But once you've got the rough estimate of where your spot is going to be, if you've got a washer, you can use the washer to mark the official location for your magnet. Now hopefully you have not gone ahead and basted the entire piece together yet. This is why you shouldn't, because now you're going to pull it apart and install the half of your magnet. All right, once you've got your magnet installed, you can go ahead and baste the whole thing closed. Next, we're going to set this aside. Now grab the main front upper piece and the front lining B piece. And you're going to clip those together at the top edge and then stitch them together at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now you're going to fold the seam allowance up towards the top. And top stitch across the edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Hey there, just popping in to let you know that I made a little bit of a mistake. I completely forgot while filming and while writing the instructions that right before you install the magnet on this portion of the front panel, you're going to want to install your stabilizer. Just go ahead and put it on the back, centered. However, if you are using waterproof canvas, you can treat this as an optional piece because it should still be stable enough on its own, so it's not really a necessity. But use your discretion because it's your bag. Next, you can use your pattern piece to mark the location for the other side of the magnet, or you can make your mark 1 7/8 inches down. I did not make my mark, so I'm going to go ahead and do that after I mark my centers. All right, and then go ahead and grab your washer and make your marks and then install the magnet. All right, now that piece is together. Now we're just going to grab the front pocket piece again. You're going to want to make sure that your magnets line up with each other. And then line up the rest of the pocket. And add some clips. Now, I do want to point out before I stitch this, if you end up having the bottom edge doesn't match up properly because of the fact that you had to do your 1-inch adjustment on the upper accent, that's totally fine because it's all well within the seam allowance. So you're just going to go ahead and baste this closed, and then we will be done with the front panel for now. Now we are going to move on to the exterior gussets and the back panel. And you're going to need both of your exterior gusset pieces. Got 2 of them here, as well as the main exterior piece. And then you're going to want the 2 gusset upper accents and the 2 gusset lower accents, as well as the main, the back upper accent and the back lower accent. And then you're also going to need the main stabilizer for the back and the gusset stabilizer pieces. So first we're going to start with the upper accent pieces. So just go ahead and lay them all right side up and grab a pen and draw a line down the center. Then if you love double-sided tape so much, go ahead and throw a strip down the center of each piece. Go ahead and peel off the backing and fold the long edges into the center just like you would if you were making a strap. And again, if your machine doesn't have a problem with double-sided tape, you can throw another piece right down the center seam on the wrong side. Okay, and we'll set those aside for just a moment. Now let's grab the bottom pieces with the gusset and the back. And just like we did on the front, we're gonna go ahead and add the accents to the bottom, stitch them at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then butterfly the seams and top stitch. Next, we're going to go ahead and butterfly those seams. And of course, I'm going to use a gazillion yards of double-sided tape again. And then again, we're going to butterfly the seams. And then top stitch on both sides of the seam. Alright, and then we're going to go ahead and add the stabilizer to the back. I believe in the instructions I've got the top accents being put on first. If you are using webbing or cotton, it's less of an issue, but if you are using vinyl and don't want to accidentally melt your vinyl, you could put it on afterwards. So that's what I'm going to do. Next, you're going to take your ruler and draw a line at 1 3/8 inches below the top edge. But also, once again, if you would prefer to do it the other way, just go ahead and line up your ruler. And you won't need to do 2 rulers for this, just the one. Peel off the backing and place it down right up against the ruler. Just like that. Alright, and once again, we're going to top stitch on both sides. Alright, so now you're going to need the 2 gusset sides that we just finished, the bag bottom, your strap anchor, your 2 square rings, and 6 sets of rivets. Now for the rivets, you basically want to use whatever size works best for the thickness of your fabric. These are 9 millimeter posts with an 8 millimeter cap, I believe. Or they might be 8 millimeters. Let me double check. 8 millimeter post with a 9 millimeter cap. That's what I'm using on here, because I am using the the cotton canvas, so my layers are a lot thinner. Now we're going to start off with the gusset sides and the bag bottom. Just lay the bag bottom down over one of the gusset sides and clip the bottoms together. Make sure that they align as close to flush as possible along that lower edge of the gusset sides. And then go ahead and stitch together at 3/8 of an inch. And then attach it the same way to the other gusset side. And then fold the seam allowances towards the bottom and top stitch. For the next part, go ahead and grab a long ruler. As well as a removable marking tool. And you're going to draw a 1 7/8 inch mark right down the sides of the gusset. You don't have to worry about going over the upper accents. You also want to be sure to mark your centers on the bottom. I'm also going to draw my line down the center the short way. And then I'm going to take my strap anchor band and I am going to find the centers, or the center on it, and mark it with some chalk as well. As close to the center as possible. And the reason why you want to do this on the right side, not the wrong side, is because it will help you line up your marks when you go to add the band. Now once again, if you do not like using double-sided tape, you don't have to, but I recommend doing it to help align your band properly and hold it in place. Alright, now I'm going to set that aside for a moment. Now I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to stick it in between both sides of the strap anchor band, making sure that they line up with the end of the ruler. And then I'm going to use my chalk pen again, and I'm going to make a mark 4 inches in, as well as 5 3/8 inches. Okay, then on the wrong side, I'm going to flip that over and I'm going to do another mark at 6.5 inches. And then I'm also going to take a little bit of double-sided tape, just about an inch or so, maybe a little bit more, and put it on the end of the strap on the sides where the 6.5 inch mark is. Then I'm going to grab my square rings and slip them on with the 6.5 inch side up. Take off the backing and fold it down to the line, just like that. And I'm just going to throw in some clips to hold it down. Now, if you prefer, you can actually add longer pieces of the double-sided tape, just as long as you stop them about 1/2 inch away from the hardware. You don't want to get that double-sided tape up here underneath the hardware, because then it won't move freely. Alright, so now flipped over to the right hand side, or the right side rather. Let me move my clip. Actually, I'm not even going to use it. You're going to do a stitch across one of the lines, down the side, across the other line, and then back up. And make sure that you pull your threads long, because we're going to pull them through and hide the ends. So go ahead and top stitch. And just like that, I actually won Bobbin Chicken. So now I'm gonna peel this open and pull your threads through so that they all meet in the center between both sides of the strap. So you should have all 4 threads pulled through in between. And I'm just going to fold this back and tuck it underneath my foot for a moment. Use that to hold it to tie all 4 of these strings, threads off together. I'm going to do it about 4 knots. And then I'm just going to kind of pull it over the tape that's there and then trim it. So that's what mine looks like. And then I'm just going to put it back and squeeze it nice and tight. Okay, so that's what your end should look like. All right, there's both of our ends done. Now we're going to grab the gusset and what I like to do is snip a little bit of the paper off. I can talk. Paper, the backing off of the double-sided tape. And then, remember how I told you that the marking would help line it up? This is where you do it. You just line it up right in the center and press it into that exposed tape. Now, what you can do is move your stuff around until you find the placement that you are happiest with. And I think I'm going to go with that. And then you're going to peel off the rest of the backing and then slowly line it up. Now, once you've got that down, you want to make sure that while it may not line up perfectly with the bottom, you want to make sure that that end is at least covered and right there with the upper accent on both sides. And you should have some overhang. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and top stitch. I like to start down on the very bottom in the center. You're going to top stitch all the way up. You're going to go until you reach where the top stitching goes across the very top of the upper accent. So you're going to go up the side, stop where that upper accent top stitching is, pivot and cross over, and then pivot and come back down all the way down and repeat it on the other end. Also, make sure you pull your threads long so that you can pull them through and tie them off. Now, I did skip a stitch, so I'm going to show you how I fix that. First of all, I'm going to pull a long piece of thread from the top thread. Because it's not as limited as the bobbin thread. And then I'm going to take a hand sewing needle and thread it through. Okay, not all the way, just a little bit. Let's see if I skipped any on this side. Nope. So it's just, well, those could be tightened, but it's just this one. So as you can see here, hopefully you can see, I've got this one stitch that was completely skipped. So there's this huge gap, but you can see the hole where the needle did puncture. So I'm going to run this needle underneath that thread where it was skipped. And then I'm going to, well, I gotta trim this off first. So my thread is loose where it's missing where the skipped stitch is, and then I'm going to take that second end and loop it through the needle as well. So now I've got both ends of the same thread going through the eye of the needle. I'm going to pull it away from where the hole is and get my needle going right where that hole is, where it's skipped. And then I'm going to pull it all the way through on the other side, making sure that when you tug it, it pulls the thread down like it would have with the machine. Then on the other side, I'm going to slide the thread, one side of the thread off of the needle, leaving the other side still threaded. And because both of those threads came up on one side of the skipped stitch, I'm going to run it underneath that thread just like I did on the other side, so that now the thread is split on both sides of that skipped stitch area. Remove the needle, and now I'm just going to tie a knot over the bobbin side of the thread that was skipped. Don't pull too tight because you don't want it to snap and have to do it all over again. And then you just want to double check and make sure that the thread is still tucked in there. And when it is, just add a few more knots. And then you can burn it or dab some glue or whatever you want to do. I am going to burn it. Just burn, burn, burn. Make sure it melts in a nice little puddle. And now it's all fixed. So now we are going to do the rivets. So grab your ruler. Now the first one, we're just going to go ahead and put a mark right in the center of where this whole boxy area is. So in the center of both straps, or both strips. Then you're going to want to go 3/8 of an inch down from the top stitch, the top stitching on the top end of the strap, as well as 3/8 of an inch up from the bottom stitching on that box. So you've got 2 of them in the box you top stitched and 1 right in the center of the 2 straps. Now this one is one of the thickest points on your bag. So if you can't fit a regular or a small rivet in there, you're going to want to try and get a bigger one, as big as you can get. So let me go ahead and do my marks on this side. It might help if you squish it a bit. So if you've got some glass running pliers, you can go ahead and squish it. I'm going to go ahead and use these monsters to get my holes set. Now, for the hole that is in the middle of both of the accent and the strap anchor band, I'm just going to kind of roll the top of it down so that that box is still exposed. You can see the box better on the back. So without punching through the top, this part of the gusset, I'm going to reach around it and punch my hole right in the center of that boxed area. And then, so you see that goes through all the way through the gusset. For these 2, you do not want to puncture through the gusset. So you're going to hold the gusset out of the way and then punch those holes. Make sure it goes clean through. So now you've got 3 holes. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. All right, now let's see if these rivets are going to fit. So as you can see, these 8mm posts are not long enough because my vinyl is so thick. So now I've got a couple 9mm posts with 9mm caps. And as you can see, that one pokes through nicely. So that's the one we're going to use. That is blurry. Yeah, you should get the idea. I put the cap on. And then I can still use the 8mm posts on the top. In fact, they're actually a little bit long, but that's okay. Not a huge deal. You just don't want your posts to be too long. And then go ahead and set your rivets. Okay, and then go ahead and remove your marks. There we go. All done with that. And now we're almost done with the exterior. We just have the 3 pieces to put together. So the first thing you're going to need to do is grab a ruler, and on the bottom corners of both the front and back panels, you're going to draw a box that is 3/8 of an inch by 3/8 of an inch. Then grab your scissors and cut the boxes out. Now take one of your panels. Hopefully you've already cut your centers. And you're going to lay the gusset down, lining it up with the bottom edge. Now those cut marks should about line up with the seams on the right side of the gusset. And if they don't match up perfectly, you can kind of finagle them a little bit to get them there. So just like this, if you can see that. Here's the seam, and it should line up almost perfectly with that cutout. Now you can either continue your clipping all the way up the sides, or you can stitch the bottom on first. And I think I'm going to stitch the bottom on first just to kind of show you. You want to make sure that your needle goes down on the side of the box. You don't want to stitch past the box. So right here is the edge of the corner that you cut out. You want to keep your stitching on this side of it and don't go past. Okay, so now you've got one side of that done. And as you can see, that box corner is still wide open. So now you're going to kind of tuck that boxed corner up so that the two cut sides will meet. And first, you're going to want to make sure that you line up all of your seams, your top stitching, all that good stuff on the outside as best as you can. Now here, because it's so thick with the front pocket, I find it easier to use staples. Alright, and with that, you should have your corners boxed. Now they don't have to be perfect, but you at least want those two corners to meet to get as close together as possible. And then you can stitch from whatever side you want to, but I'm going to stitch from the panel side, not the gusset side. Make sure that you've got a hump jumper or some loose fabric or something handy to help you get over those really thick points where the accent fabric is. Make sure you keep the side of the gusset and the bag bottom pulled away from where you're stitching. You also want to make sure that you go all the way to the corners. Now if you've used staples, you're going to want to make sure that you actually remove those. You don't want to leave them in. Now, I didn't get that side lined up properly. This side looks good. That looks really good. That looks good. So if you're curious to see what your bag is gonna look like, you can flip it out right now. It's also a good time to check your bottom corners to see if you've gotten in there tight enough. Use this to poke it out. I think I'm gonna reinforce my corners just a little bit. But you should have some pretty tight corners already. So once I get those corners reinforced, I'm going to go ahead and repeat all of this on the other side. Okay, so now I've completed both sides and I have reinforced it by, I went from one side right around the corner on all four corners just to kind of pull everything a little bit tighter together. So now, oh, I still have some staples to pull. All right, gonna go ahead and trim the seam allowances by half, but I'm gonna start about an inch down from the top. So in the instructions, I did say to baste around the outside. I didn't do that because, frankly, I forgot. I also have a tendency not to follow the instructions, even my own. So, oops. So now you're just going to pull it right on through. If your bag is extra stiff, you can use a hair dryer or a steamer to heat it up beforehand. Works better on vinyl than anything. Alright, and then just go ahead and push all of those corners out. So now the outside is pretty much finished. I am going to stop because it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I need my rest. So I'm going to clamp the exterior just so I can make it have a little bit sharper lines, and I'm going to leave it like that overnight. I highly recommend getting yourself some of these heavier duty clamps, not just for this bag, but for any bag where you're going to want your seams a lot sharper. Like with the Narcissist, I do this. And several other bags. They come in handy. There we go. Just gonna leave this sitting overnight, and then we will get back to the lining tomorrow. Okay, so here we are the next day. I apologize in advance if you hear barking or yelling or stomping or any of those noises, because my house is very lively at the moment and it's a very nice day and I can't control what goes on upstairs. So as you can see, I've already removed my clips and I've got these lovely clip marks all over my vinyl. So I'm just going to show you how I take care of that really quick. You can either just let it sit on its own and let them you were warned. Let them go away on their own, or you can use some kind of a heat tool. I have an embossing heat gun. If you use a heat gun, you have to be extremely careful because these things reach extreme temperatures. and can burn your fabric in an instant. It can also cause serious damage to your skin, so you want to keep your hands away from the end. You can also get the same results using a blow dryer, or a steamer. I don't feel like going to get my steamer out right now, so I'm going to use this. So you just turn on whatever your heat tool is, and you want to make sure that you make several passes over the vinyl so that it can slowly come back to its regular form without holding it still in the same position for long periods of time. So I'm going to let this cool, but I just kind of rub over it with my fingers a little bit. The marks are still slightly there, but with time they will completely go away. Alright, so there we go. I've gotten most of the clip marks out. Don't have to worry about the canvas. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this aside until we are ready to use it. So now we're going to move on to the lining zipper pocket. This is a hidden pocket, and this is also optional. Well, so is the slip pocket. Pretty much anything pocket-wise is optional. So you're going to need your main lining, 2 zipper pocket pieces, your zipper, and your zipper pull. Go ahead and install the zipper pull onto your zipper. Okay, so to start off, you're going to mark your centers on 1/2 of the pocket pieces. One of the pocket pieces, as well as the main lining. All right, go ahead and set the lining, main lining piece aside, and flip over your zipper pocket and grab a ruler. You're going to make 3 horizontal lines. The first one being 3/4 down from the top edge. The second one being 1/4 inch down from the first line. And the third one being 1/4 inch down from the second line. And just so you know, this is a great way to measure out a zipper pocket on any bag. You don't have to have the template for the opening size. You just have to know what your seam allowance is and how wide you want your zipper opening to be. Now we're going to do some vertical lines. So the first one you're going to do 1/2 inch from the side and just cut right across those first 3 lines. And then move your ruler over and do a second line 1/2 inch over from the first. Repeat that on the other side. 1 and 2. Okay, then we're just going to go ahead and add those little triangle marks. And this is going to be where you'll be slicing before installing the zipper. So this way, you've got the full width of zipper that you can use, and you've got a 1/2 inch seam allowance on either side, which should give you plenty of space to stitch your pocket closed when you're done with it. Next, grab your main lining piece, and you want to make sure that you have, if you have non-directional fabric, or if you're using something like stripes that are obviously directional, depending on how you turn it, you want to make sure that you write where the top is or where the bottom is. I like to put the name of each pattern piece on the bottom of every piece so that I will automatically know which is the top and bottom. The reason why it's so important on these lining pieces is because they are pre-tapered for you. So instead of having to cut in your stitching and then sew a smaller or a wider seam allowance towards the bottom to avoid saggy lining, these are automatically tapered for you so that you can keep up with the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and not have to worry about having to remember to taper in to stop your lining from sagging. So my tapered end comes down at the bottom, so this would be the top. So I'm going to lay my pocket piece down. So top and top, and this needs to go down 3 3/8 of an inch. If I can see my center mark. Three 3/8 of an inch centered. Or as close to centered as you can get. Remove the ruler, and then go ahead and stitch around the central box, ignoring the lines on the sides because those were just for marking where the zipper will go. I'm going to start in a corner to keep things nice and neat. Definitely back stitch. Try to stay on your lines or as close to it as possible. If your stitching doesn't exactly line up making the box perfect, like say you're following along the stitch line and then you pivot to move down to the bottom line, and then you want to pivot to go back up, but your needle doesn't fall directly on the line, then I suggest keeping the stitches on the outside versus the inside, because then you'll have more space if you're using a number 5 zipper. If that doesn't make any sense to you, just ignore me and make it the way that you are used to doing it. Now we're going to go ahead and slice the pocket opening. Make sure that you avoid cutting on your stitches and just slice those 2 triangles until they come to the point. If it's not perfect, it doesn't matter because it's not going to ever be seen again once you get this pocket put together. Just most importantly, avoid cutting through your stitches. And then from that point, slice straight down the center line until you reach the other point. And now your pocket should be open. Of course, I like to use double-sided tape here, so I'm gonna go ahead and add this here. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but it gives me extremely crisp pockets, and my machine can handle it. Of course, it helps that I cheat by using lubrication on the needle and thread. All right, go ahead and pull your pocket through. And this is where my double-sided tape shines. If it's easier for you, you can press your pocket to where it needs to be, but I love my double-sided tape. Okay, this is the part where you'll press it if you are using a press. Alright, so make sure you've got your pull on your zipper tape. I am once again using my zipper jig. This came from Myth Leather Co., and I know that Garth recently opened up a pre-order like a month ago for anybody who wanted them. I did not order another one. I don't know if I actually will or not just yet. If I end up getting my dream machine, which is the Juki 1541S this summer, then I will have to set up another sewing station, which means I will need another zipper jig. So we'll see what happens. Just line it up as best you can. As you can see, the zipper jig is magic. I'm going to go ahead and switch my thread, and then we'll stitch it together. I'm going to go ahead and pull my threads to the back from where I started, just so I can pull them out of the way. Remember to pull your threads long so you can pull them back to the back to join with the others. Then you're just going to go ahead and tie them off. And then melt them, or use fray check, or do whatever it is you want to do. I like to melt them because then I can melt them nice and flat. And you'll also notice that my zipper is a lot longer than the zipper panel. That's because I always make it a lot longer than I need, just to make sure that everything goes where it should. Next, you're going to take the other side of the pocket and lay it right side down. And then clip them together. Now, in the instructions, I show you how to do the double flip over, which is something that I learned from Lauren Mormino. However, I don't always do it that way, and I will show you the other way that I do it. You still flip over one edge, by about 3/8 to 1/2 inch, however wide you want to do it. It doesn't matter. Well, I guess it does matter. As long as you've got at least a 1/4 inch lip, it'll work. Okay. And then flip it over. And you're going to match that edge with the other side, but fold it the opposite direction. So instead of having the double fold over, you've got opposite ends folded, and you're still going to clip them together. Alright, so now that that's all clipped together, we're going to stitch from the bottom up the side, across the top, and then back down to the bottom. You're going to leave the rest of the folded edges alone because we're going to use those later to turn it out. Make sure that you keep your lining main completely out of the way when you sew. Go ahead and remove your clips and trim down any zipper excess. All right, just make sure that your zipper works. Hello. All right, we're done with that for now, so let's go ahead and set it aside. And at this point in the instructions, I've got a little bit of a wiggle break. So get up, go to the bathroom, get yourself a drink, maybe grab a snack, stretch your legs, stretch your back, stretch your arms, stretch your neck, stretch everything, and just kind of loosen yourself up. Now onto the lining slip pocket. For this, you are going to need the back lining panel that we just finished with the zipper, and the 2 slip pocket pieces, the slip pocket trim, and 3 magnets, except you're only going to need 2 halves. I'm using the female halves, and 1 full. First, to start, you're going to want to draw a centered line down the middle of the pocket trim. Then place a piece of double-sided tape down the center. Set that aside for a moment. Grab the 2 inner slip pocket pieces. And keep in mind, these are also tapered, so you want to make sure that the longer side is at the top, shorter side is at the bottom. And you're going to lay them wrong sides together. We'll add a few clips at the top. Next, peel the paper off of the back of the trim. And you're going to want to lay it down, lay the lining piece down kind of right up against the line that you drew, but not directly on top of it. I'm gonna have to do it upside down so I can actually see what I'm doing. So you want it to be just slightly lower than the line itself. And if this piece overhangs on the sides, that's fine. Not a big deal. All right, so let me see if I can show you this here. So you see how there's a little bit of space in between the top of the lining and the line on the trim. And then go ahead and fold it over. And you want to make sure, oh, I got this part a little too close. Or did I mess up my marking? I think I messed up my marking. Yeah, I did slightly. Alright, so let me just redo this a little bit lower. Just slightly. The way I just showed you is the way it's supposed to be done. But I got my marking crooked, so my bad. Fold the trim over, and you want it to align with the back. I'm just going to throw a few clips on here. So you can see on the side, since it's overhanging, when you fold it over, they line up. That is what you want. Double check. My whole line is crooked. Gotta love it when all this stuff happens. When I'm filming a video, I can't go back and just change everything. So convenient. Alright, that looks pretty good. Then you're going to want to go ahead and top stitch. This is sort of a pick your own kind of a thing. You can either go at an 1/8 of an inch, or I'm sorry, 3/8 of an inch, or 1/4 of an inch seam allowance for your top stitching. Whichever you think would look best. Just make sure that you catch both the front and the back in your stitches. I went ahead and did mine at 1/4 of an inch, so that's what that will look like. Next, you're going to decide which side is going to become the inside of your pocket. Since I did my top stitching from this side, I'm going to make this side the back, which will be the inside of the pocket. And if you haven't already, mark your centers. On the top, it's a little bit harder to mark your centers because you can't cut it. So your best option is to use a ruler to mark it. And first, I'm going to go ahead and trim this off. There we go. So once you get this lined up, I'm actually just going to go right ahead and mark the location for my magnet. So right in the center, you're going to go down by 1 inch. So I've got my center here. And I'm going to just draw the line, which is a little hard for you to see on camera, but I can see it. So I'll draw that, and then I'm just going to set my 1-inch ruler up against the edge of the pocket to get my center line for the horizontal. So now I've got my actual location. I'm going to grab a washer and lay it down right over the center where the crosshair is, essentially. And I'm going to mark the location with my pen. And then I'll just go ahead and wipe away the chalk so I don't have to deal with it later. Now with the location marked, you want to make sure that you pull the two sides of the pocket apart and go ahead and punch your holes or slice them or whatever you need to do. Alright, and this is going to be, since I'm doing all female magnets on the back panel, I'm going to use the male on this part of the pocket. Of course, I got to use my glue. Just a tiny dab there. And a little bit on my Decouville. Then go ahead and install your magnet. Now you can baste all of the open sides, and if you have a tag you want to put in, now would be a really good time to put it in. I'm going to put mine right there. With these kinds of tags, I like to make sure that they're in the seam allowance, but not all the way up to the end, so that they stick out far enough that you can actually read them properly. So my seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch here. I'm going to stick it in 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And I've got a little bit of double-sided tape to hold it in place so I can stitch it down when I baste. Now you're going to need the back lining panel, and if you haven't already, make sure you mark your centers. We're going to go ahead and add the magnets. So for the magnet that's going to go to the slip pocket, it's going to be straight down and at 2 7/8 inches. And then the other two are going to be 1 1/4 inch down and 3 inches in from either of the outer edges. And then go ahead and install them. There we go. All 3 of those are installed. Okay, so I had to take a moment because I realized that I cut my pocket panel too long, so I just trimmed it up. So you're going to lay the pocket over the back lining, You want to make sure that the snap meets up in the center and that everything is properly aligned. And then making sure that your zipper pocket is out of the way, you're going to baste the 3 edges together. All right, and that is all done. All right, now we are going to finish putting the rest of the lining together. And you're going to need the other 2 halves of the magnet that will be the closure if you've installed them, the bag lining bottom, the gusset pieces, the other remaining main lining panel, as well as your back panel. First, I'm going to start with the main lining panel, which will be the front. And I'm marking my centers. Then you're going to want to put the other halves of the magnets on. And you can use the exact same measurements that we did previously for the other halves. So 3 inches in from the sides and 1 1/4 inches down from the top. Okay, so now that the magnets are installed, go ahead and grab your gusset pieces. And keep in mind that these are also tapered pieces, so you want the longer edge at the top and the shorter edge at the bottom. Go ahead and lay them right sides down. Line them up with the sides of the panel. And it could either be the front or the back panel, it doesn't matter. This is just the last one that I did, so it's still on my table. And just add some clips. On both sides, sew from top to bottom at 3/8 of an inch. Go ahead and trim your seam allowances by half if you want to. Now we're going to go ahead and lay the other panel right on top and attach the gussets the same way as you did on the other one. I do want to point out that in the instructions, I show to start about 1 inch away from the top and bottom before you trim your seams. And I forgot to do that on the other side. So the only reason why I have it that way is so that you have a little extra to stitch to when you stitch the bottom on the bag and when you stitch the top to the exterior. Now take the bag bottom and your ruler, and I'm going to do this on the wrong side since it would be easier to see. And you're going to do just what we did to the exterior panels, which is make a little 3/8 inch by 3/8 inch box on each corner. And then go ahead and cut those out. Now taking the rest of the lining, you're going to lay the bag bottom down against the bottom of the bag, against the bottom of the whichever panel is laying on your table. And you want to line up those cut corners with your seam. So like that. And then add some clips. You're going to want to make a 1-inch mark on both sides, starting at the cutout, go 1 inch out. And this is on the bag bottom. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just make sure you've got a 1 inch line, or a line at 1 inch on there. So from that 1 inch mark to the next 1 inch mark, you are not going to stitch. I am doing this on the back panel side because the zipper pocket is on the back panel, and it will make it most convenient for stitching up the bottom of the bag through the zipper pocket when we get to that point. So I'm only going to stitch from the seam or the box cutout to the 1 inch mark. Stop, move over here, start at the 1 inch mark, and go to the seam. And I just realized that I got my alignment wrong because I put my bottom on rotated the wrong way. That's what I get for fussy cutting and not paying attention. Anyways, now you're going to go to the side, and you're going to want to pinch these together as evenly as possible, and then add some clips. I'm going to go ahead and clip both sides while I'm at it. Now, if you left those little 1 inch tabs on the bottoms of your lining, you can butterfly them out so you've got a little extra to catch. But since I didn't do it on that side, I'm just going to go ahead and trim these off because it's no big deal either way. Alright, so now you're going to stitch from where you stopped your stitches or began them, whichever side. Stitch end here, stitch end here. You're just going to stitch straight across on both gussets. There you go. Your bag bottom should look something like this. And you can go ahead and trim the seam allowance. Make sure that when you get to the part where you did not sew across the entire bottom, that you stop trimming right at that 1 inch mark. Alright, so there we go. And now the lining is ready for final assembly. Alright, we are in the home stretch now. So you're going to take your exterior and your lining. Your exterior should be right side out, and the lining should be right side in, just the way that they will be in the end. Make sure you've got the pocket side of the lining going against the back of the exterior, and tuck the exterior inside of the lining. Some people prefer to do the lining inside, exterior outside. Do it however you feel most comfortable. This is just the way that I have always done it. So you're going to go ahead and line up your seams. Again, here is where, if you left that 1 inch or so area, you can butterfly your seams for a little extra catch. And you can add clips or staples. I will be doing staples, but I want to get it lined up with the clips first, just to make sure everything is roughly where it should be before I start stapling it. Alright, so as long as everything stretches out and lines up, I'm just going to go ahead and add some staples. And then when you get to the sides, you want to make sure that you tuck the strap anchors down inside so that they don't get caught in your stitching. Alright, and then if everything looks good, go ahead and stitch everything together, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright, and if you added staples, go ahead and remove them once you make sure that your stitching looks good. And you can trim the seam allowance by half if you want. I usually leave mine intact, so I will not be trimming it off of this bag. Alright, when you are ready, you can go ahead and turn your bag out through the bottom. Make sure that everything was caught except for your strap anchor, because you don't want that to get caught. Then shove everything into the exterior. And then open up your slip pocket, open up your zipper pocket. Pull your zipper pocket out. And then pull your lining bottom out through the zipper pocket bottom. You want to make sure that you've got access to that opening. And then once you do, flatten it out, add a few clips, and then close it off following the 3/8 inch seam allowance. When done, you can go ahead and trim it down to match the rest of it. Look at that. Twice in the same video, I won bobbin chicken. And then just go ahead and shove the lining back in through the pocket. You can tuck the pocket back in for now, but do not close it up yet. Unless you don't mind back stitching on your top stitching. So now you're gonna straighten out all of the top edge. Make sure your seams lay nice and flat. If you need to, you can stick some kind of a pokey tool in through the pocket opening to push out edges that didn't go flat. Or edges that didn't come all the way out, I should say. Okay, here we go. So I typically like to start towards the back near a gusset seam to start my stitching. Make sure that you, unless you want to back stitch, that's totally up to you. Make sure you pull your threads long. And when I say long, I mean long, like maybe 6 inches or more, because you're going to need to be able to really reach them inside. And then go ahead and top stitch. Totally forgot, but if you have, some magnets now come with these little caps. If you have any caps, or if you have some scrap vinyl or something to cover your magnets with, I highly recommend using them as your magnets slide across your machine. Make sure you stop your stitching 1 stitch away from where you started. So it will look like that. See how there's my started thread, and there's my stop. What we're going to do is we're going to take both of those threads and put them through one of the holes down into the space between the lining and the exterior. And we're going to do the same with the pieces on the lining side as well. First, I'm just going to trim them a little bit so that they're even. Then going to grab a hand sewing needle, and I'm going to thread both sides, or both the start and the stop of the exterior through the eye of the needle. All right, that took a little finagling because I grabbed a tiny-eyed needle. So now what you're going to want to do, and be very careful when you do this, pull the lining out away from the exterior so that when you stick the needle in there, it's not going to poke into anything. So I'm just going to go right back in through one of the previous holes. Make sure your fingers are out of the way. And then I will pull the pocket open a bit. I'm actually going to use these guys to pull the needle out and pull the threads long so that they are now hanging out from the pocket. Okay, then I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the lining side threads. Okay, then once you pulled it through, take them off the needle and make sure you've got all 4 threads. You want to double check that everything is pulled nice and tight on the outside, both the exterior and the lining. And then try and get yourself a nice close-up of where the threads are, and just tie them off. I usually do about 4 or 5 knots, and then I will add some fray check just to lock them in place. I'm not going to burn my threads because I don't have really a good way of getting them mashed in there properly. And I'm not going to trim the threads super short either. But before I trim them, I am going to go ahead and add the fray check, because I can pull the threads out and actually reach them. So I'm going to lock those in place. Get some along the threads as well, the part that I'm holding. And then I'm just gonna double check to make sure that last knot is in there nice and tight. And then I'm going to trim it and leave about 3 inches on there. Fold your bag back out the way it's supposed to be. And then get your pocket ready to go. Now, first thing I'm going to do, and I don't believe I put this in the instructions, but I'm going to trim just a little bit off on the raw edged side of the seams, just so it won't stick out from the bottom. Being careful not to actually clip the seams themselves, or the stitches rather. And then pull it apart, and you should be able to still see your crease lines, or if you pressed it then you'll be able to see. And then just line everything up and add some clips. Now if you did fold those when we first put the pocket together, if you folded them apart, you should have a nice clean edge with your corners tucked in nicely as well. Alright, we're almost done. Now I have my stitch length set to 2.5 millimeters, and I'm just going to sew a nice tight line as close to the edge of the pocket as I can get. Then I just want to make sure that I caught everything, and I did. So I'm just going to go ahead and burn the edges, or rather burn the ends of the thread. Okay, and then tuck it right back into its little pocket hole. Go ahead and close up the zipper, and you can close up your snap for your pocket. And there you go. C'est fini. All we have to do now is add the strap. So earlier we only added the one end cap, unless you didn't add end caps, which is totally fine, because it'll be a lot easier to thread it through. So in order to get this put on properly, let me see, how's the best way to make it so you can see. Okay, so let me put up this way. So I call this the top of the strap and this the bottom. So you want the top of the strap facing up, okay? And go all the way down towards the end of it. Now you're going to tuck the top of the strap down through what would be the inside, because it faces the inside when it's up, of the square. So, see that? And then you're going to pull it through. And then you're going to tuck it through so that the top of the strap goes over the top of the strap, and pull it through both sides of the slider. So it looks like that. So you've got a loop now. Then you're going to flip your bag to the other side. So now, holding the square ring straight, you're going to, with a straight strap, tuck the top into the outer side of the ring. And then you're going to want that ring, the square ring, to sit right in the middle of all 4 of your previously punched holes. And I forgot to grab rivets. So I'm just going to grab 2 rivets, 2 caps. What is it that Lauren calls it? Sloppy and unprofessional? I am totally that. I need to get one of her shirts. Alright, so if you remember way back to the beginning, I had issues getting the ends of the strap, I believe, into the end cap. So I'm just going to go ahead and pinch these. And then I'm going to grab my reverse pliers. And I'm just going to pop the end cap open a little bit more. And then I'm going to insert the strap. And install the screws. That screw may have been a little bit too long. And I'm just going to pinch this closed a little bit. If that screw is too long, I don't want to poke it too much because it'll, come right out. The other side, and I totally did that. Oh well. Too late and I don't feel like fixing it. Alright, then go ahead and put in your rivets. Add your caps. and then go ahead and install. And guess what? We're done. We are done, 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 done. So done. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Yes, this is meant to be a soft body bag. Yes, the sides are meant to bow out because I like the way that looks. If you don't like having the sides bowed out, you can try using Decoville Heavy in either side of the gusset, as well as the bottom. Totally up to you. I recommend Decoville Light because it gives you a little bit of structure, but you still get that squishability that I love so much. So that's my bag. We've got the snap pocket in the front, and then we've got the snap slip pocket with the hidden zipper pocket on the inside. And if you choose to, you can also omit these top snaps. If you want, you could add a zipper by adding a zipper placket. You could do, what's it called? I can't even remember right now. I've got one in the Narcissist, where the zipper's down here. I can't words right now. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'll leave you with some of my listing photos for this bag because why not? If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments or join the Facebook group for the patterns and you can ask there. Lots of knowledgeable people in there who are familiar with my patterns. Definitely go to my website and check out my other patterns. You can find the Narcissist there, as well as the Greedy Clutch and the Greedy Clutch Spooky Pack add-on, and the Bat Company bag, which is one of my most popular bags currently. The really cool looking messenger bag with the bat wing flaps. So thanks for hanging out. Hopefully this didn't take up too much time. I have no idea how long I'm going to make it be when I edit it, but I guess I will catch you in the next one. Bye.